You're watching the 420 Pace Network, found at 420radio.ca and paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
So let's get up, let's get on it, don't you leave me broken hearted tonight.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
You like music, you like weed, well, we gonna be good friends indeed. This is how much I like more than smoking trees. They'll make you dance the do-si-do and teach you how the chiba grows. Smoke a bowl on the 420 radio show. On Lifestyle Radio.
This is the 420 radio show. We are live on LifestyleRadio.ca. Come on in the chat room, which I haven't even loaded today. So Marcel's not here today, so nobody's in the chat room, but I'll come in just to say hello in a few minutes. Excuse the hissing. I'm not sure who it is. I'm going to ask everybody to mute, if you don't mind, so we can figure out what the hissing is.
I don't know what's going on with you, dude, but that sounds horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So, David,
yes.
I would like to introduce you to the listening audience. This is Dr. David Allen from Sacramento, California, formerly of the Human Solution, I believe.
Yes.
And if you'd like to take it away, sir, and introduce yourself and tell us what you've been doing and why we invited you to talk here today about, particularly about the situation you're experiencing with your the medical board down in California recently.
Okay. The medical board is used as a tool to suppress this new science of the endocannabinoid signaling system, and or the ECS. And the ECS is it's a new science, and it involves these chemicals that your body makes, and they lock onto these receptors that are on all your cells, and they cause physiologic reaction, and all kinds of things happen because of this lock and key kind of mechanism. And this system is a chemical communication system that controls all metabolism. It controls cell division and cell differentiation. So this is the major control and communication between cells. You know, cells have to be able to communicate with each other so they know what the other cells are doing. And they do this by having these protein receptors on their cell surface, their cell membrane. And there's different receptors for different things. So there's different antennae. You may think of them as antenna. There's a different antenna for insulin and for estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and opiates and cannabinoids. And as these chemicals float around, they touch these antennae, and they lock onto them like a lock and key mechanism. And so only insulin locks onto insulin receptors, only cannabinoids lock onto cannabinoid receptors. And so they're like a lock and key, and they cause signals to happen. And it controls everything. And so the upshot of this is this. By controlling the ECS, you can control, say, diabetes. There's already studies now that show that if you smoke cannabis for 20 years or more, and that's not the best way to use it, but if you smoke it for 20 years or more, the incidence of diabetes is about 66% less than the population. And so your doctor can't give you any medicine to decrease the incidence of diabetes. He can only give you stuff to treat it, but he can't give you anything to decrease the incidence by even 2%. So this is like a miracle. And actually, I'm sure once we're allowed to study cannabis, because scientists are prevented from studying cannabis, once we're allowed to study cannabis and show that if you eat cannabis, it's going to have even more protection than 66% reduction. So what this means is the financial impact of this is this. If you had a dialysis company or any kind of a medical company that was dependent on diabetes, you would be quite fearful of something that was going to decrease your business by 66%. And so the medical board is used as a weapon to kind of slow down this progression of this changeover, because what this means is the people that are currently getting money for health care are not the same people that are going to get money for health care in the future. So they want to fight that, and they're using the medical board to suppress this information. And so the medical board has gone around and attacked doctors that do this kind of work. And actually, Prop 215 was introduced in 1996, and it said that any doctor that would talk to his patient about cannabis should not be punished. Yet the medical board ignores this law. It's a law. It's voted into law. The medical board ignores this law and repeatedly goes after many doctors doing this kind of work. So Dr. Molly Fry was attacked by the medical board. Her and her husband were attacked by the law enforcement and the medical board, and the law enforcement came in and they checked her garden every year. And Dr. Molly Fry and her husband, Dale Schaefer, who's an attorney, wanted to make sure that they were completely legal. And what they did is they had the local law enforcement come in to check her garden, and the law enforcement agreed and checked it every year. And what they did was they documented that they had over 100 plants the statute is a 5-year statute, and so if they can document that you have 100 plants, over 100 plants in a 5-year period, then you have federal charges, and that's exactly what they did to them. So the law enforcement came in, like 1 year they had 33 plants, and the next year they had something, I don't know all the plant numbers, but basically they were just a little bit over 100 plants in a 3-year period, and they did 5 years for this crime.
Cumulatively, they count them.
Cumulatively, they have 5-year statute of limitations. So if the feds can document, and so what this also means is this: they could technically use Google Earth for a period of 2 or 3 years, 5 years, and say that by Google Earth search that your property has so many plants on it. I'm sure. I don't know that that's ever been done, but technically that's kind of where they're going with this. And so really Google Earth could be used in cases in the future. Wow. Unless people get sanity and legalize cannabis. So I would like to file a class action lawsuit, and I've talked to Dr. Molly Fry about this, and she agrees. And we would like to find a lawyer who's willing to take the medical board to federal court for suppression of a branch of science. Because the truth is, what they do is this: there's a thing called a good faith exam, and you have to do a good faith exam to be legal. but there's no single definition of a good faith exam. And so they use that technical thing, and they pick apart your exams, and they say, well, he didn't do a good faith exam because of X, Y, Z. And that's how they prosecute you. And they actually prosecute you in a administrative court. And what this means is, normally if you're charged with a felony or something, you go to a criminal court and you have the right to have a jury. But if the medical board comes after you, they take you to administrative court, and there's just an administrative judge, and there's no jury, and it's almost impossible to hire a lawyer that practices what they call administrative law. And in addition, the medical board of California pays the administrative law courts like $1.2 million every quarter. So basically, the administrative courts and the judges are employees of the medical board. And how do you think that these guys rule for or against the medical board?
Wow.
If they're being paid by the medical board. So what they're doing is they're suppressing doctors, talking to patients about this. And the truth is, what doctors do, cannabis doctors currently, and this is going to change, but currently cannabis doctors just talk to patients about cannabis. They evaluate them. Is there any contraindications? And is there any safety issues that the doctor should address? And then what the doctor does, he signs a legal document to allow the patient to use cannabis legally. Previously, he was using cannabis illegally prior to coming to the doctor. But after he comes to the doctor, he gets a piece of paper that says it's legal for him to use cannabis. And so we're actually doing society a favor, and our medical expertise allows us to judge mortality and morbidity and make a decision on whether the patient can use cannabis safely or not. And so we're really doing a counseling service. We're not really doing a medical service. And in addition, this is all fraudulent because cannabis doesn't hurt anybody. There's arguably no contraindications to cannabis except for major allergies, and even major allergies may not be a contraindication. Now, that's a pretty bold statement. I did a test. You can look it up on YouTube. I was in Vancouver at Remo's house, the urban grower, and he had a friend of his that had topical cannabis allergy. So when he touched cannabis on his skin, he broke out in hives. And I demonstrated this on YouTube. You can look it up, Dr. Allen Cannabis Allergy Tests. And I put some cannabis and some hash and some hash oil on them, and put some Benadryl and steroids on them. And you can see the reaction. But this guy smokes cannabis on a daily basis. So the truth is, you can still use cannabis and have an allergic reaction to it. How about that?
I met somebody who is allergic to the touch of it, but uses it on a regular basis, ingestion and inhalation. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, cannabis is writing new medical rules. This is unlike any other previous medicine we've ever used, and there's almost no complications. There's almost no contraindications. Some people think that pregnancy is a contraindication. I personally feel that it is an indication to use cannabis, not a contraindication. And the medical board considers schizophrenia a contraindication, or even bipolar disease a contraindication. I believe that's crazy to think that schizophrenics are helped by cannabis. They might want to stay away from sativas, but in general, cannabis will help even the worst. No matter how mentally ill you are, cannabis will still help you.
I agree. Absolutely, that's great.
Yeah, you're here. I've got quite a comment and a few questions, if you don't mind. Do we call you Dr. Allen, or can we call you David?
You can call me Dr. Allen, sure, or Dave. I just find David and call me David.
Oh, okay. David, I don't know about everybody else from up here that's with us right now, but it seems a little bit surprising to me that this is happening in California, because I personally have always seen California as kind of being cutting edge when it comes to cannabis and medicinal cannabis, and we thought that things were pretty liberal down there. So it
is. But we still have people that are making money on the drug war, and those people are not liberal. And here's something you need to understand: people that smoke pot don't think the same way as people that don't smoke it. So pot smokers have different thought processes from non-pot smokers, and this is well known. And the non-pot smokers think somehow that they're superior intellectually and in decision making than pot smokers. They think that all pot smokers are lazy, worthless, confused, bumbling, and it's not true. And it has to do with the brain anatomy. And this is a little bit of an explanation, but if you can follow me, here's how it goes. There's really two parts of the brain, the upper brain and the lower brain. And then there's a switching mechanism in the middle that controls whether you're thinking in the upper brain or the lower brain. Now, the upper brain is the cognitive part of the brain. It's the mammalian part of the brain. And it takes time to think. It has a bunch of it matches a bunch of stuff, and it comes up with a good answer. The hindbrain, the reptilian brain, is only for protection of the species. And what it does is it does three things: fight, flight, or freeze. That's all it does, those three things. And it doesn't take any time to do it, okay? So the concept is, if the bear is going to eat you, you can't take time to think about his eye color. You got to get out of the way and act immediately. So you got to, flight. And so this is a protective mechanism that protects the species from predators and things. And the switching mechanism that switches between the upper and lower is the midbrain. Part of the midbrain is called the amygdala, and you have one on each side, so you have two amygdala. And the amygdala is an organ that it's a fear organ of the brain. And what it does is it monitors the situation, and if anything happens that was previously thought of as dangerous to the individual, then what it does is it causes amygdala alert, okay? And what it does is it actually causes a thing called amygdala hijack. And what this means is it turns off your thinking part, your upper brain, and turns on your lower brain. So it hijacks your cognitive powers. So whenever you stimulate the amygdala, it kind of makes you where you can't think a little bit, okay? And it just puts you into reaction mode. And we really don't know how the amygdala stores this memory. Some people think it may be even a DNA memory, because we know that if you take baby chicks that have never seen any danger, they were just born, and if you fly a shadow of a hawk over them, they all scatter. And we think that this is a genetic learned trait that is stored somehow in the genes, in the DNA of the amygdala. Okay? Now, so what does this mean now? So when you use cannabis, cannabis works by inhibiting stuff. So cannabis works by inhibiting nerve transmission. So if you have seizures and your brain's telling your limbs to shake, cannabis, the endocannabinoid system, has a way that it can retrograde signal the nerves and send signals back to the brain to say, hey, look, you don't need to signal me this much. And it lowers, it decreases nerve transmission. So it slows nerve transmission by retrograde inhibition of signal transmission. And so what that means is when you smoke marijuana, you can turn stuff off in your brain that you previously couldn't turn off. You can inhibit nerve transmission. So if you can inhibit stuff, you can most likely inhibit the amygdala. And when that happens, you feel chill. You're not on alert. You're not worried about something going to eat you. You're not. You have less concern. You're just. It has the effect that marijuana has on you. It lowers anxiety. So what this means is all cannabis use is medical, even if you don't know the science behind it, because it allows you to turn off your amygdala, and when you turn off your amygdala, you have more cognitive process, you have more empathy for other people. Now, the third part of this analysis is this. Scientists wanted to find out what CB1 receptors actually did for thought processes. And so what they did was, now the CB1 receptor is a big protein, and it pierces the cell membrane 7 times, and it has a portion on the inside of the cell and a portion on the outside of the cell, and it's shaped funny, it has charges on it. And when the cannabinoid molecule binds onto this, it causes a physiologic reaction. And I can explain more about that, but basically, so they wanted to find out what CB1 receptors did for memory. And so what they did was they have these, they know exactly where on the DNA that the CB1 receptor resides. And they can actually pluck that out. They can knock that segment of DNA out and put a segment of gibberish DNA in there. And when they raise animals with this new DNA, they can raise mice with this segment knocked out, and they call them knockout mice. And when they test them, they can indeed do not have CB1 receptors. Okay? And so they have CB1 knockout mice. And they wanted to find out how this mouse reacted compared to regular mice that have normal cannabinoid receptors. So they made this test called a Morris water maze, and it's just a big circular tank with water in it, and it has a little stage that's placed in it, and it's right below the surface of the water, and it's clear and you can't see it. Okay, and then they have a camera over top the Morris water maze, and then they have some markers on the side so the animal can see which direction is which. So they have a square on one side and a circle on another and a star. So here's what they do. They put the mice in there, and the mice swim around, they record them on the camera, and eventually they run into the stage. They stand up on the stage, and they can save themselves from drowning. So they do that to the regular mice, and after a while, they know right where it's at. You throw them in, and they'll go right to where the stage is. And they do that for both groups, the regular mice with cannabinoid receptors and the knockout mice without. And eventually both groups of mice know right where the thing is, and they swim towards it. After they teach them this about a week or so, they have to teach them. So then they repeat the experiment, and here's where it gets interesting. What they do is they just move the stage to a different location. And they throw the regular mice in it, and the mice go to where it used to be. They test the environment. It's not there. What do they got to do? They have to go somewhere else and they start searching. They find where the new location, and they save themselves. The knockout mice continually swim where the stage used to be until they drown. And even more interesting, if you pick them up and put them on the new stage with the new location, they jump off, they deny reality, and swim to where it used to be. And drown.
Wow.
So let's take this concept and apply it to humans. So in any enzyme system, there's going to be genetic defects, and some people will have better enzymes than others. Okay, and so same thing with cannabis. So when you smoke cannabis, the first time you smoke it, you already have cannabinoid receptors, but once you smoke it, the number of receptors that you have increases logarithmically. And we don't really know how this happens. They call it upregulation of the cannabinoid receptor. And what happens is, all of a sudden you have a lot more ability to inhibit parts of your brain. And so, if people have cannabinoid deficiencies, then they would act like knockout mice.
Right, and they can't save themselves then.
And so they would do repetitive, destructive behavior, despite that the information coming back to them, the feedback information coming to them tells them that they're not being successful. They continually do destructive behavior. So,
wow.
So that's kind of exactly what happens in the knockout mice. They hate newness. They don't like change. They can't accept change at all. And so they fight and fight to maintain what used to be. And I think this describes the drug war. It describes the fear, the hoarding of money, the hoarding of weapons and food, and the hatred for other races. So I think that cannabis cures racism because it inhibits the amygdala.
So what you're saying is Donald Trump really needs a fatty.
In the worst way.
On that note,
in the worst way.
That was a good way for me to break in there, Ross. I'm sitting here, and I am listening very intently. But we're going to take a quick break. This is the 420 Radio Show. I'm on my way into the chat room. I was waiting. If there's anybody in there with questions, or if you have a question for David or Dr. Allen, whoever you want to call him today, we'll be right back. We're having a very interesting conversation. When we come back, I want to find out a little bit more about you, David, as well, and what your practice is and things like that, okay? And
sure.
We'll be back in a couple of minutes on the 420 Radio Show. We're going to listen to some Ellen Buskdale. Who's your Punisher? No, who's the Punisher now? There you go, on the 420 Radio Show.
Oh, who's the pusher now? That's a good one.
Now? Yeah, you see, there's dyslexia in action right there.
We love you, Al.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
The National Task Force on Medicinal Cannabis is a group of not-for-profit organizations dedicated to influencing government policy with factual evidence. Our mission is to ensure that a constitutional medical program is developed that will address the concerns of all Canadians that require therapeutic cannabis. The task force is looking for dedicated people who are willing to contribute to our cause. We have formed this task force to foster a unified approach and focus on lobbying the federal government and Health Canada. We represent the combined expertise of thousands of patients with more than a decade of experience. As a task force participant, you, your business, or your group will have an opportunity to show that you care and offer your unique skills to promote the cause. If you would like to get involved, go to medcanataskforce.org. That's medcanataskforce.org and use the Contact Us link to get started. Help us help you.
This is Bubbles from the trailer park, and they're playing some fucking excellent music on LifestyleRadio.ca. I hope I didn't sound too nervous there.
You hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Back around 1935, depression, riding high, people trying to have some fun, smoking dope, and opium. Government did what they do best, making a mess, made a crime that's victimless, criminalizing cannabis, and the big drug money machine sells oxy and morphine. Legal drugs get us hooked, a million deaths overlooked. Methadone, fentanyl, halcyon, phenobarbital. Let the government take a bow. Who's the pusher now? Follow the corporate money trail while decent people rot in jail. Guarantee full occupancy for private prison industry. Caught up in a living hell with a couple of million prison cells and government hypocrisy, paying for modern slavery. And the big drug money machine sells oxy and morphine. Federal laws still protect drugs with deadly side effects. Percocet, Thorazine, opiates, amphetamine. Let the government take a bow. Who's the pusher now? The war on drugs, a political joke, locking us up for smoking dope. No reason for doing time with a punishment when there ain't no crime. No cartels are running beer. Prohibition made it clear when you turn a market black, it's hard to turn it back. The government gets behind the gun. The IRS has never done our taxes pay the FDA, so the DEA can put us away. And the government drug money machine runs like it's on Dexedrine. Politicians legislate so they can mass incarcerate. Look at the human cost, personal rights get tossed. Let the government take a bow. Who's the pusher now? As a garden weed, when your body feels your pain, smoke some medical Mary Jane. Let the government take a bow. Let the government take a bow.
are back. This is the 420 Radio Show. We are live on Lifestyle Radio. Unfortunately, I forgot to come into the chat room because I got talking with David and everybody here in our little group here. We are still talking with Dr. David Allen from California, who you are in the process of challenging what?
Challenging what?
Yeah. You're in the process of trying to stop the medical board.
I think he's being challenged. His license is being challenged.
That's what I mean. Like you're trying to stop that, right?
Well, yeah, I want to sue the medical board in federal court to take it out of the medical board uses the administrative court, and the only way you can get out of this is to, you have to get it out of their court to get a judgment against them.
Okay.
So I want a lawyer to do a class action suit to sue the medical board for suppression of the endocannabinoid signaling system science, and by using a good faith exam as an excuse to take away medical license. So it's a lawyer. It's a tricky word that they use to justify taking people's license away.
Can I ask, is a good faith exam, does that require to be in person? Or, because one of the issues here in Canada is that a lot of people are being signed up for a regulatory system with like Skype and telephone calls, and doctors are never actually in the same room as the person that they're signing the authorizations for and so on. So a good faith exam in California would be that you're actually in the same room as the person?
Well, no, that doesn't necessarily mean that, because the medical board allows Skype exams for all kinds of other things. The armies, the services are using it, and a lot of these big insurance companies are using
Because you're never actually in the same room as the person that they're...
All right.
So the definition of this good faith exam is really fluid, and it really makes no sense. And the truth is, you shouldn't have to go to a doctor to tell you can use something that's safer than water. It's safer than table salt. It has a lower LD50 than table salt or water. So cannabis can be used without going to a doctor. In the future, what doctors will do is they will know what defect of the enzyme system that you have, and they'll be able to fix it. And they'll be able to give certain cannabinoids and maybe even CB1 and CB2 blockers. Now, blocking the endocannabinoid signaling system is an extremely dangerous thing, and it's resulted in death a couple of times. Recently, they had a death in France where a group of people were given this FAAH enzyme inhibitor, and that's fatty acid amide hydrolase. And what that does is that's an enzyme that degrades excess cannabinoids that your body makes. So once your cannabinoids are used, your body has a way to degrade them to where they don't work, and so the effect doesn't last as long. And so the scientists, in their foolishness, thought that, well, if you can inhibit this enzyme, then you would have more endocannabinoids build up, and then you would have less pain. And what happened was it ended up in somebody dying from it. They had a cerebral hemorrhage, and several people got sick. And that's the second time that happened. The first time was the scientists developed a CB1 blocker that actually blocked the cannabinoid receptor and prevented anandamide or any other cannabinoids from locking onto the receptor. And So, and the thought was there that if they blocked the receptor, then they would, then people would not be hungry and they could use it as a diet drug. And what happened was when they blocked the CB1 receptor, all kinds of bad stuff happened. So people were not happy. Instead of being happy, they were sad. They were committing suicide and even homicides. And they weren't hungry. They couldn't sleep. And they had arrhythmias. They developed tumors. And the rats that were given this developed cancerous tumors from blocking the CB1 receptor. So the ECS, the endocannabinoid signaling system, what it does is it causes homeostasis. What that means is it causes a balance. If anything is imbalanced, it causes it to come back in balance. So apparently, when you block the balancing system, it's extremely bad for the person. So blocking the endocannabinoid signaling system is deadly. But in some instances, we may have to do this. And the reason that is this. Some diseases respond to stimulation of one receptor and the inhibition of the other. So by stimulating CB2 receptors and inhibiting CB1 receptors, you get less. If you have a heart attack, it results in less scarring of the muscle. If you have liver disease and you block this, if you block CB1 and stimulate CB2, you have less scarring of the liver. So some disease entities will have to have stimulation of one and blocking of the other, but basically we're manipulating the control of cancer, the control of diabetes, the control of heart attacks, the control of strokes, of seizures, of just virtually every cancer responds to cannabinoid therapy. There's almost no cancers that don't respond to cannabis therapy. And so this discovery is really the secret of life.
Wow, that's really amazing. I was curious, as you were speaking of the CB1 and CB2 receptors, is there, do we know which particular cannabinoids work on each of those two receptors, or is it like any or all could affect either or?
I don't think all of that science is out just yet. THC
I imagine they're working on that, though, right?
Right. THC binds to both CB1 and CB2 receptors and seems to be inhibited by cannabidiol. So the binding of THC to the CB1 receptor is in part blocked or inhibited by cannabidiol. And so cannabidiol modulates the effect that THC has on the CB1 receptor.
Excellent. And, that's kind of what I was asking, yeah. Good. Very good.
So, this is real super complex science. It's much harder than rocket science because we're talking about the spatial arrangement of the anatomy of a molecule, of atoms. We're talking about, micro anatomy. We're stuff that you can't see with a microscope. The shape of a molecule, and it's a signaling chemical, and it basically controls metabolism. I just wrote an article. It's in Cannabis Digest. It's called "The Evolution of Metabolism, Homeostasis, and the Endocannabinoid Signaling System." It's a big, long title. And what it's about is CB1 receptors control glucose metabolism, and CB2 receptors control fatty metabolism. And it's kind of hard to explain if you don't know all the metabolic pathways. But basically, glucose, when you burn sugar, it produces a lot of energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So it produces a lot of ATP, but it also produces a lot of exhaust. The exhaust it produces is oxygen and free radicals. When you burn fat, it produces even more energy, but it produces a lot slower, and therefore it produces exhaust, oxygen free radicals, at a much slower rate. And so by burning fuel at a slower rate, you actually extend life. By burning fat, energy fast, you shorten life. So bears, when they hibernate, what they do is they change their CB1 and CB2 receptors so that in the summer, when there's a lot of food around and they're eating constantly, they're gaining all this fat, they're living off of CB1 receptors. And so CB1 produces a lot of energy. They can move around. They're alert. Their mentation is alert. And then, so in the spring or the fall, they start having less food. They start sleeping more. Their glucose drops. It makes them lethargic when their glucose drops. They start sleeping more. And then they change their receptors to burn fat. And then in the winter, they go into hibernation. It's also called torpor. And that's where they lower their respirations, their heart rate, and their temperature. They can lower their temperature as much as 15 degrees. And that's like lowering your metabolism about 75%. So when they go into torpor in the winter when they're hibernating, they lower their respirations and temperature and they decrease their metabolic needs, and they sleep because they don't have enough glucose to keep their brain going. They just have enough to survive, but no more. So they basically shut down. So this has great application to any cell that divides rapidly, like a cancer cell or even bacteria. They have to divide rapidly. Guess what energy they have to burn? They have to burn glucose. They can't divide when they're just using fatty metabolism. They have to use glucose metabolism to divide. And since cannabinoids, CB1 receptors, control glucose metabolism, guess what? You have a master control system of everything. So this controls whether your cells have the ability to divide or not. So by inhibiting CB1 receptors and taking less sugar, you can probably kill cancer cells. You can probably kill bacteria. You might be able to put humans into a state of suspended animation or hibernation and send them on space trips that they could not survive otherwise.
Wow.
Holy cow, that's a lot of good information there, man.
Can I ask you a quick question, David, if you don't mind? I've been having a conversation.
Beautiful information. Thank you very much.
It's great.
Yes, I'm kind of just stunned here.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm sitting here with just sort of half stunned. It's amazing, this stuff. Yes, excellent information.
Yeah.
So please look up Cannabis Digest. I have a bunch of articles. I wrote another article about how cannabis may actually inhibit the Ebola virus.
Wow.
And there's a bunch of science behind this because it inhibits what's called cytokine storm, and that's how Ebola kills you. And I wrote the article and I had a bunch of science behind it, and then Governor Gary Johnson picked it up, and he mentioned it, and they ridiculed him. All the pot haters hated it, and all the pot lovers loved it. And the article was reprinted in about 7 different languages. And they can't disprove me unless they do a clinical trial.
Wow. Yeah, well, we know how hard it is to get one of those.
Yes.
Oh, wow. You know, it's
and that's a good place to end. you know, the reason people don't understand the controlled substance, CSA, how the classes actually affect politically how it affects cannabis and the science of cannabis. And so there's five classes in CSA, 1 through 5, and cannabis is Schedule 1. And as a Schedule 1 substance means that it's not safe in doctors' hands and it's not currently used for medical treatment. And anything that's Schedule 1, it's illegal to possess it. So that means that if a doctor wanted to study it, for him to possess it, if he wanted to try it on patients, it would be illegal for him to do that unless he got the cannabis from the government, and he had to apply for a bunch of stuff, and it's basically never given to anybody that's doing any studies that show cannabis efficacy. They only fund studies that show cannabis harm, like National Institute of Drug Abuse. Their whole mission is to do studies on drug abuse, not for efficacy of cannabis. So, being a Schedule 1 drug means that you can't study it, which means you can't do double-blind studies, which means that there's no studies that show cannabis works. So this is a catch-22. By making it illegal for scientists to study, anybody that does a study that shows that cannabis helps is going to be immediately attacked, unless they have government permission that they don't give. So this law is a law against knowledge and science. This law is a suppression of information. And as such, and since this is a drug war, then there should be rules of war. And that means if there's rules of war, then if you claim that this war is based on hurting the children and causing harm, and really the ulterior motive is to arrest people and put them in jail and profit from the arrests, then truly that's a war crime. So these people that don't know this science about the endocannabinoid signaling system and profit from putting people in jail for growing a flower that doesn't hurt people, these people are war criminals.
No, I don't disagree with that statement at all.
No, neither do I.
I mean, here in Canada, I mean, it's so bad. They're basically killing people. People have been dying, literally dying, waiting to get it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wait till they find out that they're actually hurting their own families, because there's people in their own families that could use this medicine to stop cancers, stop heart attacks, stop strokes, stop diabetes, and stop a lot of suffering, and make it where you could have some empathy for the other man.
Yeah, but they're not but they're not going to feel bad because they don't believe it. They don't think that it's good. They think it's only bad, and they'll die thinking that. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's so sad. And things and
if you try to tell them information about this, when you talk to them about marijuana, their amygdala is stimulated. And once their amygdala is stimulated, if you try to give them any information about marijuana, they reject it as irritation.
Isn't that called cognitive dissonance?
It's called cognitive dissonance. And so these people, they have an air of arrogance that they're superior to us, that they have better cognitive powers than we do. And the truth is they have less empathy for other humans.
Like conservatives. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? On that note,
it really does.
On that note, I wanted to give David.
Dr. Bob Melamy talks about flips and bips, forward-looking people and backwards-looking people. And this is the same concept that I talked about. The forward-looking people they're not afraid of change. They welcome change. And the backward-looking people, they hate change. They want it sameness. And the backward-looking people are brainstem driven. They're reptilian. They're reptilian people. They're snakes. And the people that use cannabis have empathy. They use the mammalian part of the brain. That's not to say that cannabis people that use cannabis don't have an amygdala, and they can't be. They're still amygdala driven, but they have the ability to turn it off more so than people that don't use cannabis, and therefore they have more empathy.
I love the way that all ties together. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it basically supports, I think, what we've been learning through observation over the last 5, 6, 10 years. Don't you think, folks?
I do. I think it does.
Up here in Canada,
there's definitely snake people and mammalian people and non-snake people. So that's why people that don't smoke pot don't think the same as people that do.
And they become conservatives. I understand now. It's so much clearer.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things. I guess we're coming up to the time you said you were able to join us for an hour. Can you let our listeners know where to find you, how to reach you, before we have to let you go, David?
All right. My email is cali215doc@gmail.com, and that's cali215doc@gmail.com. And so check out Cannabis Digest. I have a bunch of articles I wrote in Treating Yourself, but that magazine is closed. But I want to end the war, and I want to stop this slavery that they have us under. And I want people to use cannabis freely and not be arrested for it.
Amen to that.
I think we're all behind you on that. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. That was a very, very, very informative hour that I'm going to listen to over and over again, and be sending to many other people I know. Can I tell you?
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah, there. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for joining us, David.
Well, thank you for having me.
We've shared a lot of information here already. We're only an hour into the show. We're going to take a little break. We're going to say goodbye to Dr. Allen, and we're going to come back with, we're going to talk to Chris Backer about his accident while he was making medicine about 5 years ago. And then we're also going to talk with our buddy from BMA Hydoponics, Ross Middleton, about, I don't know, maybe growing stuff. We'll be right back on the 420 Radio Show. We're live on Lifestyle Radio. Come on in the chat room and say hello.
Hello.
On Lifestyle Radio.
Good evening. I'm Coulter Wonkite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
Thank you for joining us on the 420 Radio Show. This is Chris Backer with your 420 seconds of news. You've heard his name in the news before, and Dana Larson isn't pulling any punches this round in his fight against prohibition. After just recently causing a stir in the Liberal Party with the gift of his newly released book, The History of Cannabis in Canada, coupled with a gram of primo cannabis delivered to all the members of the party, he's on to his next act of civil disobedience. Free seeds for everyone is the cry of the day, as Dana endeavors to get Canadians to grow their own victory gardens of cannabis. Dana says, I myself pledge to grow a dozen big and beautiful cannabis plants in my yard this year, and I urge you to do the same. Grow them on your balcony or your windowsill. Grow them in your front yard or your back, but let's finally bring our plants out of the closet and into the fresh air where they belong. There are many that dislike or fail to see the purpose of civil disobedience, but everything that we have so far or don't have yet in relation to cannabis has come from civil disobedience. From rallies to marches and smokeouts to sit-ins, the freedoms we enjoy every day have been fought for by people that have had enough of prohibition of one sort or another. Whether they're banning books, bongs, cannabis, or freedom of speech, count on people like Dana Larson to stand up and take the fight to the politicians and the authority figures that seek to limit those freedoms. Whether we fight for freedom overseas against foreign powers that look to control or attack us, or here at home against the ones who are supposed to be protecting us but aren't, we can count on the few that have the courage to take the stand and say no. These are my freedoms and I'm not giving them up. So with 420 just around the corner and the Global Marijuana March in May, Harvest Fest celebrations coming later in the summer and in the fall, I invite you to look up what's happening in your own neck of the woods and join the rest of us in normalizing cannabis use. And if there's nothing happening where you are, then start something. You'll be amazed by the response. More are for it now than against, so come ride the wave. Thanks again, Dana, and if you're listening, I'll take a bag of seeds too, please. You can catch Dana on his cross-Canada Free Marijuana Overgrow the Government tour this April. You can catch him at one of his many stops across the country where you'll learn the hidden history of cannabis in Canada, discover how you can open your own dispensary, and get free high THC seeds and special gifts for everyone. To find out where he'll be and when, check him out at overgrowcanada.com. Ontario is set to ban e-cigarettes and medical marijuana users from smoking or vaporizing anywhere regular cigarettes are prohibited thanks to Bill 45. We've made a determination that smoking, whatever it is, whether it's vaping, whether it's medical marijuana, whether it's cigarettes, that there should be restrictions to that, Premier Kathleen Wynne said on Thursday. And so the rules will apply to cannabis, to medical cannabis, to vaping, as they do to cigarettes. The new rules come months after the Liberal government backtracked on the electronic cigarette regulations just one day after the exemption for medicinal cannabis users came to light. A local vape shop owner says changes to the provincial government wants to make where people can use e-cigarettes will hurt those who want to turn to vaping as a way to quit smoking. We're frustrated with the fact that we keep getting lumped into tobacco and it's not smoking. Vaping isn't smoking. There's no smoke involved, so to treat it like tobacco is very frustrating, he said. And from a patient's point of view, using cannabis isn't smoking either. It's called medicating, and it's time for the politicians to get with the program and stop banning this healthful alternative to smoking. Now I want to talk about jury nullification. Jury nullification is this. Juries have the power to nullify a law in an individual case by finding the defendant not guilty, even when he or she clearly violated the law in question. The jury can use its discretion to determine that the law itself is unjust, immoral, or unconstitutional and refuse to convict. The New Hampshire House has passed a bill that would require courts to inform juries of their right to vote not guilty when a guilty verdict will yield an unjust result. If passed into law, HB 1270 would amend this section to read, in part, in all criminal proceedings, the court shall inform the jury of its right to judge the facts and the application of the law in relation to the facts in controversy. It used to say the defense shall inform the jury. It's an important distinction to require the court to inform the jury instead of having the defense do so, said Michael Bolden of the 10th Amendment Center. When it comes from an official source like this, it becomes more likely that a juror will consider this as an actual option. In proceeding upon the request of the defense, the court would be required to inform the jury of their options, guilty, not guilty, and jury nullification. The exact statement from the court would include, even if you find the state has proved all the elements of the offense charged beyond a reasonable doubt, you may still find that based on the facts of this case, a guilty verdict will yield an unjust result, and you may find the defendant not guilty. It would be nice to see the same thing happen here in Canada, and all it would take is for people to know that it's a fact and you can do it. And the fact is that as a juror, it's your right to say not guilty. The NIH, the National Institutes of Health, released a study in which they claim to have discovered a new condition, marijuana use disorder. While being one of the most ridiculous articles I've ever read in a while, the fact that the NIH is claiming there's even a condition called marijuana use disorder is sure to turn their name to MUD. M-U-D, I like that. In a recent report, Dr. Grant and her team found that a percentage of Americans who reported using cannabis in the past year more than doubled in the last 10, and the increase in cannabis use disorders during that same time was nearly as large. The researchers interviewed more than 36,000 U.S. adults about alcohol use, drug use, and related psychiatric conditions. Notably, the current study applies diagnostic criteria to marijuana use disorder, from Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-5. The DSM-5 marijuana dependence and abuse are combined into a single disorder. To be diagnosed with the disorder, individuals must meet at least 2 of the 11 symptoms that assess craving, withdrawal, lack of control, and negative effects on person and professional responsibilities. Severity of the disorder is rated as mild, moderate, or severe depending on the number of symptoms met. I think another severity of the disorder would be called imaginary. Veterans Affairs. Canada's Minister of Veterans Affairs has launched an internal investigation into a rising number of medical cannabis prescription reimbursements. Canada's program to repay veterans for their cannabis has been growing in popularity as the medicine becomes more commonplace in Canada. CBC reported that 1,320 veterans were reimbursed for their medicinal cannabis in the first 9 months of the 2015-2016 fiscal year. That's up from 628 last year and 112 the year before that. The fact that the former government let this program evolve from 2007 onward without a policy, an informed policy based on the wellness of veterans and their families, frankly shocks me, Harris said. The Conservatives, of course, didn't miss the chance to attack the governing Liberals over the program the Conservatives themselves created. It's very worrying, Conservative defense critic Pierre-Paul Huss said. What we're doing is we're taking our veterans and we're saying we're going to give you a joint of cannabis and that's going to help your problems. I don't think that's the solution. But the 100 of veterans who use cannabis as medicine think that is the solution. I need it for my PTSD and I don't sleep. For my anxiety, for depression, Sylvain Chartrand, director of the Group of Canadians Veterans Advocacy, told CBC about his own medicinal cannabis use. Chartrand, who served in Cyprus in 1990 and Bosnia in 1993, seems to have solved the mystery of the government about why the government is so confused about. Yes, there's an influx, but most people were using it before and just not getting it paid for.
She's getting pressure from peers.
This has been Chris Backer, and that was
here's the fun thing. We're back, and we're in here. Okay, we're back. I wasn't paying attention. Okay, here's the fun thing. We're talking about doctors, and I've got a chiropodist appointment, and for my feet. And we were talking about, while she was doing my feet last time I was there, we were talking about cannabis. And she told me that she didn't think that she would ever prescribe it. And I asked her why. She said she just didn't. She didn't really give me a reason, which is her choice. But I will tell you this, and that's what Chris and I were talking about, if you caught any of it. I will tell you this, Chris. I do know for a fact that the place I go to, 2 of the doctors are on board as far as cannabis goes. One of them is mine. Won't say where I go, obviously, because I don't want to do that to them. Okay? The rush.
Look, the fact that they don't want to say anything, they don't want to say why. It's like doctors that say I'm not allowed to sign. We know that it's a lie.
Yes, but this is just one doctor in a clinic. And
absolutely.
where I know that 2 other doctors there are okay and on board with it. Now, so when I go in to see a doctor now, I know enough information to say, okay, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Do you want some pain relief? Sure. How do you feel about cannabis? Oh, blah, 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 blah. The excuses start usually. But right now I have a new doctor that we're talking. Open conversation about cannabis. She knows where I'm going. She knows I have refused opiates. I do take a THC synthetic called Sesame, or the clinical name Nabalone, which is used to control spasms and pain in MS, I believe, isn't it?
And other stuff, but I've heard of it being used for that mainly. Yeah,
but it's also being used it's a synthetic THC. It's also being used to help, chill somebody out who's got some anxiety going on or things like that. It works for me when I don't have my cannabis, and that's really all that matters, right? I wish I didn't have to take it, but I do.
And if you had free access to cannabis, you probably wouldn't need it, right?
That's right. Yeah. So, anyways, back to the chiropodist. She just didn't give me an excuse or anything. She just chose not to, say that what she said. But anyways, we are sitting here now. Laurie McEachern from the MCPAC, who is also one of our new lobbyists on the Hill in Ottawa. We were just chatting with Dr. David Allen, a California doctor who is pushing the limits, I would say, eh? Is that about a good...
Well, they're making him out to be pushing the limits. He's embarking on what's an amazing science, and he's doing some incredible research, and he's taking the brunt of the heat from the feds for it, I guess.
And
it's a real shame.
It is a shame, and up here in Canada we have a similar doctor situation where too many at once, blah 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 blah, whatever the reasons are. I won't even go into it because I don't really know. Wasn't there. Although I was inadvertently involved in it, I guess. And that's Dr. Kammerman's, and he's still going through court actions and tribunals, I believe. And
that'll go on for years, and it's crazy to drag these people who are only helping patients through the mud for years and years and years.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
lives.
I've met the man. I've met him a couple of times, and he's a very nice man, and he's very compassionate, and he's all he was trying to do is help some people, and I think that it just got out of hand on many different levels.
I have to say, my biggest problem is the reason why doctors like that had to take on so many patients. It's because the vast majority of physicians out there, if they ever did have to take the Hippocratic Oath, have forgotten about it.
Yep.
I would suggest they reread it, learn it, and live it.
Well, you know
Thank you.
I think what happened, and this is my own personal opinion, okay, I think that what I saw happen was a doctor who was doing good, and because he was only one of X amount of doctors in, 2 or 3 different provinces that was actually willing to sign the forms for the old system, the MMAR, where you had to have your doctor sign it and then mail in all the forms, and you got to either buy from Health Canada directly, or you could maintain your grow or get wherever you had to get, kind of thing. And unfortunately, it all came to a standstill when I think they just went overboard, and somebody didn't like what the amounts that he gave
overboard by how many licenses he signed.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, I mean, here in Nova Scotia, you've got Dr. Gillis and Dr. Holland that face the same kind of scrutiny from the board because they're a couple of the few doctors that are willing to sign. All the other doctors know, and they just send everybody to them.
Yep.
So these guys sign all the doctors, and then the College of Physicians goes, "You guys are writing too many too many prescriptions for cannabis."
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you're sitting there, you're seeing your patients as you would normally, and then you get an overabundance of cannabis-related patients, and even though they've authorized it through the courts, it has to be, they still take it out. Like, they are taking this out on the doctors. There are some doctors out there now in the new system, the MMPR, okay, where we have LCPs, licensed cannabis producers and growers and sellers in Canada now. There's 20-something.
26, 29, something like that.
27. Last time I think it was 27 that I heard. Yeah, I hear you guys talking about it, and it kind of sticks, right?
Yeah.
I haven't looked in a while, but we have 27 sources to get high grade cannabis from medically.
Yeah.
And some of the sources are bang on, we're finding. Some of the sources are using the system to make money from people who need this medicine. And when I say need, I mean need as much as an aspirin to get rid of a headache or worse. Okay? It becomes a daily requirement after a while, right?
Oh, absolutely. And these doctors are getting scrutinized. When I've always said, and somebody else said it once before, and I like the idea that if nobody had ever heard of cannabis before, and a scientist come out of the jungle carrying this plant and everything that it does, he'd get the Nobel Prize for it.
Yeah.
Okay? You walk out of the woods with it now, you get a set of handcuffs.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's ridiculous. If it doesn't have the bad connotation, they'd be all over it.
That's it too. And can I just let's play devil's advocate here? I'm going to whip something out in public. I don't think
Lori's
said before.
going to whip somebody. Hold on.
I'm going to whip it out.
Whip it out, Lori. Hold on. Just one
as
sec.
far as Dr. Cameron's goes, was there ever any problem with him before he was outed on national television on Global 16:9?
I don't know. I
think he was definitely under surveillance. At least I think they were aware. Health Canada was aware. I believe there was an RCMP investigation that went on for quite some time.
Look,
Health Canada would be aware because, they knew every doctor that was signing forms. This is okay. So my biggest problem with this is the ethics of telling your patient that if it works for you, go use it illegally under my direction, rather than sign a piece of paper that allows them to do it within the law.
Absolutely. I mean, I've told patients, they go, my doctor won't sign. Just go, tell your doctor to sign just so you don't go to jail.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you agree with it as medicine. How about just so I don't go to jail?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if the doctor's saying if it works for you, go use it.
You know what? Let me tell you a story. And you guys have heard this story before, but maybe new listeners haven't. I walked into my old doctor's office where I was going back to the same doctor after several years, but I have been seeing the same doctor for 20 some odd years. So he knows me. And the first thing out of my mouth was, how do you feel about cannabis? Now, with ADHD, diabetes, and chronic lots of things, okay, he knows it helps. But he told me I don't know anything about doses as he was reaching for a form to send me down to COM in the city in Toronto. This was many years ago when there was one, maybe three, maybe 4 dispensaries, most of them private. Nobody knew where they are. I just saw an article in Toronto listing 5 dispensaries in Toronto and their addresses. They're opening up their doors to people actually walking in. And
last count I heard, Al, there's something in the neighborhood of 40 in Toronto now.
There's like 20 some odd just in Kensington. Or
talking about like whipping it out.
Yeah. But anyways, we were talking about Dr. K. I mean, whatever happened there, we're not judging. It's a sad story, obviously. I mean, I've met his wife and him. I went to the clinic very early. I had an appointment. I went through the process. We spoke, myself and another patient, friend of mine and friend of the station, Kelly. We paid the fee, which was $100 there. And when we left, there was a line up out the door. Okay. They have a bed and breakfast there and everything. So, I mean, they were not taking advantage of the patient per se, but taking advantage of the money opportunity, I think, a little bit as well. But I hope that they get through this unscathed. I really do. I like him. He's a nice man, and his wife is as well.
He was trying to do business and improve his life. I mean, Look,
doctors don't get into the business of medicine for not making money. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, exactly.
Not now.
So
that's
now
so.
I want to switch subjects because we're going quick tonight. It seems actually. good shows always go too fast for me. I want to talk. Ross is sitting there quietly, just sitting quietly.
I'm taking it all in.
I want to talk with Chris about a subject that we have never talked about. I've never even had a personal conversation with him about this. Just out of respect, I know about it. It's something that got around the community pretty quickly, I think, eh?
Yeah, there was all kinds of comments, yeah.
Yeah, but flat out, what happened was Chris was making his own medicine, which he now does time and time again, right? I think you've got it perfected now, eh?
Oh, I had it perfected before. I used a rice cooker once and everything went to hell. So
yeah, well, let's talk about that. Why don't you tell the story, and then we'll go through it. We'll pick it apart, so to speak.
I have Crohn's disease, and I've had it since I was about 16. And long story short, I got to watch the Run from the Cure video and the Rick Simpson, and learned about making the oil and thought it would help. So I gave that a crack. And for a lot of years, I was making my own oil and didn't have to take the 15 or 17 different kinds of pills that I used to take every single day, and things were going pretty good. And then, somebody gifted me a brand new rice cooker, and I've always used crock pots and slow cookers. And the rice cookers, I guess, when they are near finished, they switch from high to low on their own, and there's a little spark in the switch.
Or they shut off auto. Are the ones that I've seen,
when they do that, that automatic is that there's a spark right in the switch, and that causes the fire. So
oh boy!
I came downstairs, and I've got 20-foot flames in a room with a 9-foot ceiling. So I tried to get the crock pot out of the house. That the flaming crock pot with the 20-foot flames. I tried to pick that up and get that out of the house, and then things went to shit from there. So because once your arms are on fire, you can't get them away from you very fast. So I ran outside, rolled around. And they tell you the whole, you learn in school, stop, drop, and roll. You see kids rolling back and forth. Well, I just want to say that's the wrong thing to teach people, because when you roll back and forth, what happens is you put yourself out, and then you set yourself back on fire, and then you put yourself out, and then you set yourself back on fire. So I think they need to teach people to stop, drop, and roll in one direction as opposed to back and forth. But I think the back and forth is because you're on the floor in school and you don't have the room just to kind of...
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
But yeah, it was horrible. I was back on fire probably 4 or 5 times before you think clearly enough to just kind of
stop.
Yeah. So finally got myself out, and I knew that I still had a bunch of alcohol in the house with that was next to not far from the oil tank, which is also in the house. So I went back in. I got those out of the house because I couldn't imagine having the house blow up with a firefighter dying. I mean, I knew I was pretty fucked, so I didn't think I wouldn't be able to live with myself if a firefighter died because of that. So I got that out, and then I had to get the dogs out of the house. And by the time the ambulance showed up, I was kind of sitting on the front step with no clothes left on, and my just pieces of skin everywhere. It was terrible.
How much of your body was burnt?
I was burned 85%, pretty much. Yeah, from the neck down, I'm pretty scarred.
Third
My
degree?
face was burnt, but I healed really well on the face. I was pretty lucky.
Third degree?
Oh, yeah. 3rd degree, 4th degree in places. I mean, it was... I'm just absolutely... I mean, I spent, 3 days in a coma, 7 months at the burn ward in the hospital, then another month in rehab. It was probably the worst thing that I've ever been through. I mean... It sounds weird to say this, but it doesn't hurt at the time. It's just, you the screaming that happens, or the yelling, or the panic,
fear.
is because you know how bad it is.
Yeah, and you're scared.
Yeah, you know what every second things you can see the things going away, right?
Yeah,
the things that you're not going to have anymore.
Yeah.
That all happens.
It's like
so that. I mean, that happened. I had a stroke at the same time, so I'm blind in my left eye. That was a bonus out of that.
Yeah.
But I really think with all the cannabis that I have, that I've been eating the whole time, that the stroke really wasn't as bad as it could have been. Because I mean, I'm blind because the blood pressure didn't go to my eye, the nerve to my optic nerve, so the nerve died. So it wasn't so much a brain injury from the stroke as it was just the blood clot letting loose kind of thing from the stress.
And recouping, you were obviously on pharmaceuticals at one time.
I was, but I'd been on cannabis exclusively for a long time, and then when I first woke up, they were only giving me pharmaceuticals, of course.
How long did you have to wait before you got cannabis into you, and did you have to tell them, or have somebody tell them?
I had to scream and yell and shout every single day. Every time that they came in, I said I wanted cannabis. They had to talk to the lawyers.
How long did they make you wait before you got it?
It took me a month before I got my first cannabis.
Jesus, dude.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, while I was in there with the different drugs that they had me on, I had some of the most horrific hallucinations you could possibly imagine. And the day that I got my cannabis was the last nightmare that I had. Okay, I'm talking.
That's awesome.
Dreams that you just, they're so real and they're so horrific. I can't even describe them. They would just curdle your blood. And they just, the first puff, and I never had another nightmare. So all went away.
That's one thing I've noticed. I don't ever since I started using medicinally, like to that extent, I guess. I guess medicinally, when I say medicinally, it means that much cannabis.
Yeah.
I don't have the horrible nightmares I used to anymore either.
Yeah, I barely remember things. I know that I have them, but I don't really remember. I just wake up, if I had a bad when I was tossing and turning, that's it.
Yeah, me too.
I started using the cannabis. They cut down most of my meds. They really had a hard time letting me put anything on me topically because, everything's open and they see black gooey stuff and they all lose their shit, right? They go, you can't smear that on ya. And but whenever I could, I did. Now, the crazy part was, in order to have cannabis in the hospital, I had to have it in a lockbox. Okay, and the lockbox had to have a key. And while I was all bandaged up, I couldn't get out of bed, and I couldn't go over to get the lockbox. Nurses aren't allowed to bring the lockbox to me. Okay, so even if I need my medicine, I had to get somebody else to come that wasn't part of the hospital staff to go get the window.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I can have the lockbox in my bed with me. They wouldn't let. So it was pretty ridiculous.
And how long were you in the hospital?
7 months in the burn ward, and then another couple of weeks out on the main floor before they moved me over to rehab.
How were they allowing you to medicate when you were in the hospital?
Well, I was allowed having gummies and candies and cookies in the beginning. Of course, you couldn't tell them that you were using oil to make the stuff. They just didn't want the cannabis is cooked right in there.
They allowed you to use it, but they didn't want to know anything about it.
Exactly. And as soon as I could get up and move, then that's when the drama started, because then I started coming back to my room smelling and
going outside for a doobie and.
Exactly. Yeah. That's when the cops get involved, and there's always something to make it interesting. The whisperers and the talking and everybody having opinions about it. But
did nobody approach the subject of allowing you to vape in your room?
No, that didn't even happen.
That was just 5 years ago, right?
I've had a G pen since, and I've been able to vape in hospital discreetly without issue numerous occasions.
Yes.
So
yes.
But it's tiring having to hide it all the time. It would be much nicer just to be able to do it openly and take care of ourselves as adults.
And after having gone through all of that, on top of the Crohn's, which I'm sure got worse, right?
Well, yeah. Not long after I was out, I had to go in for another surgery because everything went bad with my Crohn's there from the stress of the fire and everything. So,
see, and Chris spends his day going out every day pretty much to court to support pretty much anybody who has been picked up by the cops or charged or whatever with pertaining to cannabis charges, basically, right?
Absolutely. I was talking to Daryl Sampson, who's our local MLA here, just yesterday. I got a good hour with him, and I was talking to him about them stopping arresting patients. And I said, I mean, you guys won the election. The country was shown in red on TV because of the green. So let's get off the pot and let's do something. And he said, well, it doesn't take time for Justin to tell the police that when they come to the door and the guy that answers the door has got a walker and an oxygen mask, you turn on your fucking heel and you get off his property.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what I said to him. It's that simple. Yeah. He goes, well, 2 weeks ago we met with Bill Blair. I said, don't even mention his names. And he's just a rotten cop that got off on arresting us for the last 20 years. And now you made him the head of the program. That's about the dumbest thing you could have done.
I have to say, let's be. I'm throwing caution to the wind recently, and short of coming out and starting to name names, I'm starting to just talk truth louder than ever before. And this is it. Mr. Blair says the law is the law. There never has been a gray area except for the choice of the cops not to enforce the law. Right?
They say it's not up to them, but it's totally their discretion. They get to the door and they get to evaluate the situation. If they're not intelligent enough to do that, go serve fucking French fries.
Discretionary enforcement.
Look,
that's the words I'm using from now on. Discretionary enforcement.
You know
it's just common sense. When you get to the door, it's very simple.
That's right. The cop has the call when he comes to the door, not his supervisor that's sitting on the other end of the radio. It's the guy standing in front of your door. And if he knocks on your door and gets an instant whiff of cannabis, I'll give you an example, guys. I was sitting out front. I live in a building, okay, in a very small town, and I was sitting out front. We have a picnic bench, and I was sitting out there smoking a doobie with one of my neighbors. And all of a sudden, a cop rolled up. And I said, hey, what's going on? Looking for somebody? Yeah, we got a complaint about two guys sitting on a bench. Okay.
Do it that way.
Yeah. So I said, well, just my neighbor is smoking a cigarette because we don't smoke in the building, and I'm sitting here talking to him. Okay. We had already done the doobie, obviously. And he said, what's your name? I said, oh, man, I don't need to go through that shit. You're at my house. Instantly, into park, car off, out of door, fixing belt, pulling pants up, going into tough guy mode. I sat down on the picnic bench because that's what I do when somebody approaches me who I don't want to intimidate. I'm a very big boy, as Laurie knows. Okay. And I don't want to intimidate somebody. So generally in that situation, I will sit down. Okay. And I said to him, hey now, guy, chill out. I'm just sitting here talking to my neighbor, having a smoke. You don't really need my name, but okay, here you go. Then the questions start rolling. Why are you out here? Again, having a smoke. All of a sudden, two more cars pull up. We're just sitting here having a fucking smoke, man. In my fucking yard that I pay rent to use at 11:30 in the evening.
Good Lord, better things to do, better things to do, better things to do.
Yeah. 3 cops.
Wow.
Donut.
Yeah, well, that's usually where they are. Now, on that note, Chris, we've known each other for a while, and I've not heard your full story before. I applaud what you do, man. Especially having to go through that, Chris, because there are people out there that talk a good argument. There are people out there that say, oh, yeah, oh, Shay, oh, yeah, oh, I'll be there. Sure. And you're there. Okay.
And I appreciate it, and I wish more would join me because it is pretty sad. I mean, I sit in the courtroom with people that their families don't show up. Their friends don't come, okay?
They get abandoned.
They're embarrassed or they think the person deserves it or whatever the case. And it doesn't even matter if these people are sick, have mental illnesses or physical. It doesn't matter. Nobody else gets involved. Every once in a while, but most times these people are on their own and they have somebody's face sitting out there in the pews, that's on your side that believes that you did it for a reason. You weren't wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's worth more than more than can be measured.
It's in 2016 in Canada-wide, Okay, the buzz is legalization. Period. I mean, that's the number one news subject in Canada today. What is Justin Trudeau going to do? I don't want to even get into the political argument, but it's very evident that cannabis played a role of keeping people, plays a role in keeping people like Chris and Lori, myself, alive and going. It's
and
not,
Ross.
and what?
Ross is still here too.
Oh yes, and Ross too. Sorry, buddy. He's
Yes, I'm still here, and yes, I'm still a medicinal user.
Yes.
And,
well, we all are, and that's
it's-
where I was
it's
going.
So it's so sad. It's just so sad that things have been the way they are. You know, and yeah, recreational legalization is definitely coming, but you know, we've got the Allard decision that's been handed down, and now they have 6 months basically to come up with a medicinal program. So, you know, I think that's going to be a big driver in the overall legalization.
I think that's
well.
going to happen all at the same time. To be honest with you, just from that's just my own from watching and reading and shit.
But they're not worried about the medicinal user at all. Its legalization is geared towards recreational, and you know they figure once it's legal for recreational, we'll be able to get what we want. So who gives a shit? So
But
they
that's
figure
not
that'll
the
just
case.
happen on its own.
That's not
we're
the
being
case.
left to hang out to dry.
We all, the four of us sitting here talking, and usually Marcel, and then we have Electropig, Melvin, joining us now and then as well, and Ross. Can't forget Ross again.
You need to make more noise, brother.
You know, we are sitting here on a Friday night talking about people who are sick and dying and stuff like that. Talking with a doctor in the United States who, in California, the state that's kind of like there's offices along the frickin' beach where you can go in and see a doctor and walk out with a baggie.
Yeah.
In a day, instantly. You know, go for your appointment, come out. I think one of the things, like, and anyways, David is fighting his battle down there. We're fighting our battle up here, but it's very similar. Okay,
But we need to do it together. That's the whole thing. Okay,
That's what I was
it's
getting
all
at.
of us together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's good. That's what wins the war. I mean, you can't have a couple people fight one battle. It's got to be all of us, and it's otherwise we're not going to win. I mean, it seems like we've been close before, though. Okay.
Yeah, we've been close. Like everybody thought that California was going to be the first thing. California, it's a easy peasy. They're down there growing legally anyways. They're doing their thing in Humboldt or wherever. Okay, it was going to happen. It's a for sure. Now they're probably going to be the last one, or one of the last ones.
That's
Okay.
They've got a ballot initiative on the next
Another one. This is like the third time they've tried.
I think that the polls are indicating though that it's got a pretty good chance this time. That's what I've read anyway.
Yeah.
But you know, polls.
Yeah, for here in Canada, I have to say that I probably sound like Marcel. Canada legalized cannabis in 2001, strictly regulated for medical purposes. When they switched to the MMPR, they said it was a free market. It is not. All they're asking for is what they promised with the MMPR, right? Because it has been legal since 2001. Hate to tell you this. I actually know, I've met a fellow who has had a Section 56 since 1990, so for 25 years it has been possible to legally use cannabis in Canada and produce it by yourself.
Yes.
And yeah, I guess a lot of people, like, that's 25 years of experience with someone who is medicating for MS and successfully producing their own medicine.
Let's do some math here, and then we're going to take another quick break because I want to give Ross a little bit of time to do what he wants to talk about. And but I wanted to. Now I can't remember what I was going to ask. Of course, me and my ADHD-ness. So let's just go. Let's just go and listen to a song. How about we do that? Maybe
sure.
I'll remember.
Sing us a song, Al.
La la la. I don't even have one loaded. Yes, I do. We got some Steve Burke. Should Be Legalized, which is a parody of, I believe, the Rihanna and Eminem song.
I love this song.
And I can't remember the name of the song. We're also going to, I can't remember the name of the original. It's Eminem and Rihanna, though.
He's got a bunch of good ones. I love his
I like his music, too.
Awesome.
I also like Tech Nine. We're going to listen to the Task Force PSA, which has been playing on the station for about a week now. And then when we come back, I want to talk with Ross and Lori because they're on the task force. And then we're going to let Ross, I don't know, he'll have a tip or something. You have some tips over there? Do you sell tips?
I have many tips, okay. Yes.
We'll be right back. Don't push that button first. All right, push that button first.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The National Task Force on Medicinal Cannabis is a group of not-for-profit organizations dedicated to influencing government policy with factual evidence. Our mission is to ensure that a constitutional medical program is developed that will address the concerns of all Canadians that require therapeutic cannabis. The task force is looking for dedicated people who are willing to contribute to our cause. We have formed this task force to foster a unified approach and focus on lobbying the federal government and Health Canada. We represent the combined expertise of thousands of patients with more than a decade of experience. As a task force participant, you, your business, or your group will have an opportunity to show that you care and offer your unique skills to promote the cause. If you would like to get involved, go to medcanataskforce.org. That's medcanataskforce.org and use the Contact Us link to get started. Help us help you.
Just gonna stand here and watch you burn one. That's alright because I love the way it smells. Just gonna stand here and watch you get high. That's alright because it should be legalized. Should be legalized.
I can't tell you what it really is, I can only tell you when it feels right. I come back from work and wanna take a break from real life. My dreams didn't work out, I'm stuck here in the rat race. Going to work from 9 to 6 shouldn't be a disgrace, but not in this place, the United States, where we look up to Britney Spears instead of Bill Gates. What a disgrace. How did we get to this place where our culture developed really horrible taste? Who do we blame? I can give you plenty of names, I point my finger at them, I don't really care what they say. Look at the magazines, People, Us Weekly and Star, all those celebrities, but we don't even know who they are. That's cause most of us are living lives as normal as hell. That's why we like to smoke and listen to the stories they tell. And if there's something wrong with that, then I don't wanna be right. So puff up pass and hand me the light.
Just gonna stand here and watch you blaze. Sour diesel, purple kush, blueberry haze. Just gonna stand here and watch you get high. That's alright, I think it should be legalized. Should be legalized. It should be legalized. Yeah.
Hey Congress, we need to get something straight. Don't pretend like you got way too many things on your plate. Our country's broke. You need to fix it today. The people voted for you. Start representing your state and regulate it, so we can end the debate and end the hating. No one should be so irate, because the money we make from taxes would really be great. The deficit would deflate, no need to incarcerate. Hey Congress, start using your heads. Not everyone who smokes weed is lazy with dread. Sarah Palin, Clinton, even Obama have admitted to smoking it, so enough with the drama. Like prohibition in the 20s, this law is outdated. Weed is safer than booze, it's time to regulate it. And if you don't pay attention to me, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll start a revolution and then vote out your whole
Just
crew.
gonna stand here and watch you smoke. That's alright, I think I also have a toe. Just gonna stand here and watch you float to the sky. That's alright, I think it should be legalized. It should be legalized. It should be legalized. Yeah.
Adam Sandler, one of my biggest role models. If I'm gonna do a song on weed, I'll do it full throttle. Let's name some names, just like the Hanukkah song. But instead of Jewish people, these ones hit the bong. Willie Nelson, Snoop Dogg, those are obvious ones. But Martha Stewart and Oprah, let's start naming the big guns. Kimmel, Jon Stewart, even Stephen Colbert. Woody Harrelson smoked so much that he lost all his hair. Matt Damon, Clooney, Pitt, most of Ocean's 11. If Angelina smoked me out, I think I would be in heaven. Bill Maher, Jack Black, Tina Fey, Charlie Sheen, all four smoke green. So there's the media queen, Perez Hilton. We all know you smoke joints, I don't judge you for that. You get extra points. Halle Berry, Richard Branson, John Kerry, Al Gore. I'm not nearly done yet, I'm gonna name some more. Do you see how this list is ridiculous? The facts aren't conspicuous, my research is meticulous. They've all smoked and are supporters of weed. The list goes on and on, like Michael Phelps' lung capacity. Sacha Baron Cohen and Justin Timberlake, what they both have in common is that they like to get really big. Eminem, Megan Fox, Rihanna too. I know you smoke Natalie Portman, so this one's for you.
Not gonna waste time and just stand by. I'm gonna send this to my congressman tonight. Weed is American as apple pie, and now it's time for us to make it legalized. Make it legalized. Make it legalized.
I'm ready. It's the 420. Ooh, whoa, whoa, whoa. I always do that at least once a show. It's the 420 radio show.
You do.
We're live on Lifestyle.
Sunday.
And it's usually it's like this. It's like Sunday. I love that. Sorry, people. I do it at least because, by the half hour before we're done, mark, quarter to, things are starting to slow down. We're chilling.
Red Bulls wear off, huh?
Yeah, the Red Bulls rode off. So, Ross.
Yes.
We're right at the beginning of the time of the year. It's that time of the year.
Yes, we are. Time to start looking at what strain you're going to pick, right?
Yeah. What kinds of is that one of the main questions that you're getting when somebody comes in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially since we started selling seeds, which it's been a recent development and one that we're happily doing. Business is booming. I'm learning a lot about strains. I've always been a bit of a strain buff, but I'm becoming a bit of a strain expert now with all the seeds that we've been carrying. Everybody's starting. We're starting to sell starter flats out the door by the case. We're selling cases of Jiffy 7 peat pucks. These are all propagating starter mediums that we sell. And people are saying, what strain should I be using outdoor? Should I be using an indica? Should I be using a sativa? What about these autoflowers? And they're all good questions, and with the number of strains coming out now and all the hybridization that's taking place, it's leaving us with so many choices. There are people who are looking at autoflowers and saying, hey, I can take a feminized autoflowering seed, I can start it in June, and I'm going to harvest it in the end of August. And that's just an incredible thing. They've taken the ruderalis variety from, the northern Asia, crossed it in with the indica strains from India and the Kush mountain range, and then, maybe thrown in a little bit of sativa from Africa or from Thailand or something like that. And they're coming up with all these early flowering or auto flowering strains that are basically 8 to 10 weeks start to finish.
Can you enlighten me on something? Can you enlighten me on exactly what an autoflower seed is? I mean, am I going to put it into the ground or germinate, whichever way you do it, have it pop out of the soil and instantly go poof?
Yeah, it's going to get to probably its third or fourth set of leaves, and you're going to start seeing the hairs coming out. And it doesn't matter if it's 18 hours a day of light or if it's 10 hours a day of light. They do it. They just do it automatically because they've got those genetics from the northern Asian region, mostly Russia, where they have such a short growing season that the plant has actually adapted genetically to that climate, and they basically flower right away because they don't have time to wait around for the photo period to change like they have in the lower regions in Kush mountains in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, and or in the tropical regions. Well, for example, the tropical regions, if you take something that's like a Thai strain, and if it's a pure Thai strain, and you take that and try to grow that outdoors, now you're on the opposite end of the scale. You're not going to get that thing to flower. It's going to be the end of October. You're going to be shivering, standing there looking at a plant that's still in full vegetative cycle. And I've done that. I've done that with, I put some Colombian gold seeds out one time here in Ontario, and that's exactly what I was doing, end of October with snow flurries coming down, crying because there were no hairs on my plant.
Wow.
So, in the tropics, though, they get such a reduced amount of change in the photo period. It'll go from an 11-hour day to a 13-hour day, and that's pretty much the whole thing because the sun is so edge on at the equator. You don't get that big change, so it becomes a time factor with the more sativa, the more tropical strains, where they basically take 9 months, from start till finish, and that's just the way they grow because that's the environment they came out in, as opposed to your Kush strains, which are probably the most photo period sensitive plants because that's where you have a bigger swing in the photo period, and they are generally a photo period triggered plant, and that's why they adapted to not needing one in the north to not needing one in the south, and in between where you get that big swing, that's where they really develop that propensity to flower when you got to 13 or 14 hour days. So, it's important to make sure that you don't get one that's too pure sativa, too tropical if you're growing in a colder climate like we have. On the other hand, the autoflowers do tend to be, because they are fast and they are automatic, there's nothing you can do to stop them, and they're going to go and grow, but they won't get very big, so you're not looking at a big harvest from those. So I get people coming in and they want to get a large number of seeds, germinate them, get them in, get them out, get them gone, all done, and that's that. And that's one way of doing it. That's for sure. But there's something else to be said for.
So when the seed pops up, what can you let's do an example. Say somebody has some Northern Lights autoflower or some white rhino. Okay. You crack them. Do however you do it. Get them in your trays, and or pots, whatever you're doing, and you turn your light on. From the time that process starts, how long are you looking at if somebody's got, say, like, a little greenhouse, desktop greenhouse or something like that? How long are you looking before.
Yeah, you're probably looking at, like, right from seed germination to harvest, I would say in the neighborhood of 10 weeks.
Okay. So what I'm getting at actually, though, when you start them, okay, however people start them these days, when they come up, go 1, 2, 3 tiers, and then just before they start budding or starting the hairs, as you called it, what's the length of time from seedling to that point? Usually, it depends on the strain.
It's probably going to be 3 weeks.
Okay, so you got maybe a month. Maybe a month.
Maybe a month tops. Like by the time 4 weeks have gone by after germination, you're probably starting to see the hairs. And
now, does it depend?
Within 6.
Does the timing depend on? Does the timing depend on whether or not it's an indica or a sativa?
No, because they've got that strong element of the ruderalis strain in there. They've got that autoflowering gene that just makes them go by the short growing season that they've become accustomed to. They just automatically just flower, and there's nothing you can do to stop them.
I'm sorry. Ours were more of a sativa dominant. They actually had a longer cycle than the indica dominant ones. Is that not accurate?
No, ruderalis is really the third less known variety of cannabis. You got
I'm familiar with ruderalis and the cross, and the low rider. I think was the first one I was familiar with. That
yes,
right? Yeah.
But with the hybridization that they're doing now, Lori, they're getting a lot of sativa mixed in with there. So
I'm going to interject here. I know what Seed Al's talking about, and that is an autoflower from like about 10 years ago. So I don't know how stable they were back then, or if they were as short a cycle. You know what I mean? But just wanted to interject that it's not a new autoflower seed that he has.
No, but
he's talking about.
I'm just wondering if so how old the seed is does matter. Like, that's what I'm getting. I'm trying to.
They work really good though.
What kind of a time frame somebody is looking at if they're just starting them to put out in their garden out back or wherever they have it. And
you get them in the beginning of June, Al, and you are out and in the bag by the end of August
with an autoflower.
With an autoflower.
Okay.
Whereas with others, for at least in the area that I'm in southern Ontario, May 24 weekend is usually that's your planting time. And for me, when I lived down in Prince Edward County, I was harvesting in mid-October. And I would do it in a step where you would take the main top buds first, and then wait a couple of weeks and take some more. And quite often I'd make it till like November 1st, then when I would take my last final harvest. But I was kind of lucky because we were basically on an island out in the lake and had a very moderate climate. I was in the middle of the wine growing country, kind of like the Napa Valley of Ontario, I guess you might say. And
that was the photosensitive seed that went that long.
Yes, it was, right. And those were the normal, ordinary cannabis sativa crossbreeds that.
What really sucks, though? What really sucks, though, is the fact that for some things pertaining to cannabis, because it's still an legal thing, if you get what I mean. It sucks that we still have to talk in code about some things. I don't want to implicate anybody. I don't want to implicate myself, but I want to ask these questions. That's why I have these people that I work with every week, and why I have guests on that can answer these questions. So from a patient that is completely legal, to have to still step around a subject, even though I should be able to ask these questions. And unfortunately, those subjects usually revolve around the growing thing. unfortunately, and it sucks that people are scared to. And when a couple of weeks ago, this gives me a little time to plug on the Pace Radio show Wednesdays at 8 o'clock here on Lifestyle Radio.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Al had Dale and Leach on the show, and you want to tell people about what he's doing?
You said Dana, and he's sending out seeds to anybody that wants to plant them?
That's right. He's doing a thing. There's been several people along in the past few years that have done this overgrowth thing.
I did it on the news, guys.
What's that?
I talked about it on the news.
Did you?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's okay.
No, just so you know.
Yeah. But there's lots of different overgrowths. Like Electro Pig, he was doing Overgrow the World. Okay.
Yeah.
There's lots of different overgrow campaign. I have a web page that I've been doing for many years now called the 420 Seed Drop, where I encourage people to walk around and drop seeds everywhere. That's about it.
That's awesome.
That's just it. Which is similar to the same thing.
Bring them back as a land race. Then what are they going to do?
Exactly. If everybody's doing it.
Believe it or not, there are landrace strains here now that are leftovers from back when they used to grow hemp. Recently as the Second World War, there are landrace strains, more the hemp varieties, but there are large fields of wild cannabis growing all throughout southern Ontario.
Wow.
Yeah, Elizabethtown has a couple we used to go and find when we were, driving the back roads drunk when I was a teenager.
Maybe we passed you on that road there, Laurie.
Maybe.
Hey, there, I know you. I'll meet you in a few years.
That was all the whistling that we heard there, right?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was it. So we're going to go a little bit long because there is a task force going on with several groups of people. There have been many of these things that have tried to happen, but because of the types of people that involved, I got good hopes. I want Ross and Lori, who are very involved in this, to talk about it, and I'm going to look in the chat room about an autoflower question.
Take it away, Ross.
Take it away, Ross.
Okay. The National Task Force on Medicinal Cannabis. What can I say? It's not like your regular organizations. There's no particular structure. There's no directors. There's no boss. There's no workers. There are just a group of organizations who already have that structure and that have come together and put together all of our best ideas into one package, and that package is being offered as the task force. Now, we are currently in a membership drive. We're currently in a fundraising mode, and this is all to get the same goal that all of us want. We all want to make sure that, number one, we get the kind of medicinal access that we all need and deserve, and that this new program that they're going to come up with is going to meet those needs. And number two, that when we get to the actual legalization of recreational, that the medicinal part of it is not steamrolled by the regulation of recreational. I think, and I hope, and if I can bring my crystal ball out here for a minute, I'm thinking that we're going to be going off into two different
to find
streams.
The crystal ball sound effect. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay. But we're going to go off into two different, I think, directions, and there's going to be parallel programs. And this is my crystal ball speaking here. I think we're going to have the recreational, and I think we're going to have a medicinal stream.
You think that we're going to have two programs? You think we're going to have two
Pardon
programs?
Me? Yeah, and I think that there's going to be a more of a hands-on approach, I hope, taken with the medicinal side of it, where we can produce our own cannabis, we can grow it for ourselves, we can make our own extracts, we can turn it into edibles, we can turn it into tinctures, we can turn it into any form that we feel is best to suit our medical need. Whereas, in the recreational, it's all about, hey, let's go party. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fine. Yeah. But they really are two different things that I think need to be treated differently. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that there can't be some sort of medicinal access in the recreational market. And I think some of the things that we might fight for in the recreational market would be maybe tax-free status for a medicinal user, or just being able to get
some kind of
coverage.
There's got to be some kind of a difference between Joe Schmo walking into a store and picking up an ounce of this or a quarter of that, and John Smith walking into a medical dispensary or store or whatever and having somebody there to ask the questions. I think that's important. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but still, when I go into a dispensary, it is an unfamiliar territory for me. I've only been to one. I'm just learning about strains, and I like walking into a store atmosphere where people are happy to see me, even if they don't know me, and they're willing to sit there and let me talk to them about this strain or that strain, because I'm there spending my disability check, my food money at this point, because disability doesn't cover shit. And so I want to make sure, if I'm going to take the 3-hour drive that I have to do to go to a dispensary, I want to make sure I'm getting the right strains, because otherwise I might as well just go to Joe Schmo down the road.
And you want to get the right information. You want to know that the person that you're getting it from knows what it is that they're giving you. And
exactly.
You know what you're getting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to get back go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just something just occurred to me, Chris. In your news, did you mention about the volcano and ODSP here in Ontario?
Nope.
Okay, really quickly.
Okay, go ahead.
Really
then
quickly,
I got a question from somebody in the chat room for Ross.
Okay, really quickly. Just recently in Ontario, in this past week, there has been a win in a human rights tribunal for a patient who got a doctor to prescribe them a volcano for delivery of cannabinoids. Unbeknownst to most of the country, Storrs and Bickel got a actual license from Health Canada for a medically assistive device for the delivery of cannabinoids in 2010. So, that has been approved through ODSP for this MCPAC member in Toronto.
And how much will they cover?
I believe they're covering a maximum to $700.
Wow! I'm going to talk to my worker tomorrow.
Because it's a digital medic device that is actually on. I'm sorry. One of the licensed producers is actually authorized dealer through Health Canada.
It used to be the one that used to be Prairie Plant Systems.
Now I believe that there is a little bit of a glitch in this. This only applies to if you're using licensed producers to get your medicine, though, doesn't it? Or does it not matter?
No. The lady who won this actually has a designated grower still from her MMAR system, covered by the injunction.
Alrighty. That's perfect then. So there's going to be a lot of happy people, because at least if I could get my device covered, that's expensive. I have a vaporizer here, but a Volcano vaporizer, I mean, you got a nice little baggie of the thing. You sit there, you do your medicine, and you can take it with you, so to speak.
Yeah, it's the Volcano Digital Medi device that is a digital bag. So it's a closed system. And the reason that she won specifically that device is because it is the only one that is licensed as a medical delivery device, has been since 2010. There is an authorized dealer to obtain it. We used the quote from that. I think it was $670 some was the price that was listed on their website that was used.
Yeah.
And it's a closed device, so it's a moist vapor.
Yes.
Not like a direct draw kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So there were a number of reasons why that particular device was actually approved in the long run. So,
well,
woo! Thank you, Marie.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Marie. I have a question from a guy named Dan in the chat room. Is there an issue starting autoflowers and then transferring them to either another pot or outside?
No. They would be just like any other plant that you would start indoors. You would get it started. You can transplant it into another pot, put a little bit of root stimulator of your favorite, root stimulator in there to get those roots going. But get it outdoors as quickly as you can, because time is of the essence with autoflowers. They will react just like a normal plant, and they will adapt readily to their new environment, whether it's in a larger pot or whether it's in the ground in a prepared bed or whatever you're putting it into. The only thing about them is that time frame. You don't have the luxury of kind of just hanging around and watching it grow for a while. And you really have to have it pre-planned, have everything ready to go so that you can just do it like clockwork and go click, 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 and you're done. You're in and you're out, and it's just it's a handy process for people who have a place outdoors to do it, and for some people who are in a bit of a tight place to do it, like if it's somebody's backyard or something like that, and you want to get it in and out before the neighbors even think about it, and you don't want a plant that's 12 feet tall because
that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. The autoflowers are like a maximum of probably about 3 feet tall, whereas mine are 8.
Oh, really? Really? Now, hold on one sec. Hold on. That's a question I had. I was going to ask how big they get, because that would make an autoflower perfect for somebody who was using a box, right?
Yep.
Definitely. Yeah. And you're right. They don't get a 3 foot tall autoflower. That's on the tall side for an autoflower.
That was my max.
What kind of yield can you expect from a Northern Lights autoflower?
Northern Lights is, I think that's more sativa dominant, is it not, Lori?
Yeah.
So,
I
think what it is, I think if I remember,
and I got anywhere from 1 to 3 ounces per plant.
Really? I think if I remember correctly, it's a 50-50.
Can I add something to the whole?
Of course you can, Chris.
The question in the chat room.
Yep.
When you were talking about moving the plant, whether it's a good idea or not, I'd say I wouldn't move it where they have such a short time frame they grow them. I wouldn't move that thing while it was in bloom, because the stunt that you're going to get is going to greatly affect your yield. So if you can move it before it's in bloom, I think that would be a really good idea.
Okay. Thanks for
that. That's absolutely
that.
Right, Chris. Yeah. And that's why your pre-planning is so important. You need to have all your steps ready in advance so that you can go from one stage to the next. And you're absolutely right. Transplanting a plant that's already started to flower, it's not in its growth stage, so it's not going to be vigorously putting out new roots. And it needs to have that root system established when it starts to flower.
Yeah.
Man, you guys know a lot.
Maybe it was overestimating. Though they were up about my knee, Al.
Okay.
That's how big the plants were outdoors.
Yep.
The maximum.
That's not unusual. And as far as yield goes, that again is going to be strain dependent. It's going to be what kind of a hybrid do you have? Is it mostly sativa? Is it mostly indica?
Right.
And you're going to get a higher tend towards the higher yields with the indicas than you are with the sativa dominant ones. But, then you've got phenotypes, and when you get into the hybrids between the two, you're going to put in 5 seeds, and if it's an F1 hybrid, F1 phenotype, then you can get it reverting back to any number of its original genetic parents.
Exactly.
So you could put in 5 seeds that are supposedly all the Northern Lights strain, but if it's a F1 hybrid, you could end up with a couple that are more sativa looking, a couple that are more indica looking, and a couple of others that only grew 18 inches. So it's kind of a crapshoot when you get into those genetics, and unless you've stabilized it, like every time you cross a strain back on itself, it goes from an F1, which is its first crossing. If you take those F1s and you get male pollen from them, you cross that strain back on itself, it becomes an F2, and then an F3, and an F4. And I've heard of strains that are as high as F16. Some of a landrace strain is obviously one, that is a good example of a very stable strain. It's one that's adapted over a lot of years, been crossed back on itself over and over and over. So every seed and every plant kind of comes out looking the same. It's really just in recent years with all this, crossbreeding that we get this phenomena where, you've got all these different phenotypes that all show differently from apparently the same seed stock.
I have another question from the chat room. We're getting some good questions today. During grow,
excellent.
They want 18 light. Do you give them veg fertilizer or flower fertilizer or flower booster fertilizer? 18 hours.
Okay, here's the way that works. When you're talking about 18 hours or 12 hours, that's kind of an indoor question. So yes, you want them to be 18 hours a day indoors, and you want to keep them in that state until they get approximately half the height that you want them to finish at. So in other words, if you want a plant that's 3 or 4 feet tall indoors, then when it's 18 inches or 24 inches, that's when you want to put it into 12 and 12. As far as nutrients go, yes, you want to give them those veg nutrients right from the start. When they're a very young plant, you started your nutrients at about half strength, and as the plant gets up to its 3rd, 4th, 5th set of leaves, you start to bring that up to full strength. You'll keep it into the veg nutrients right through the first until you put it into 12 and 12. And then once you put it into the 12 and 12 photo period, you're still going to give them those veg nutrients for maybe 10 to 14 days after you've triggered them to flower, because that's when they go into this sudden growth spurt and they can double their height. And that's why I say you want to look at it turning that photo period back when the plant is about half the height you want it to finish at, because the rule of thumb is when you go to 12 and 12, it's going to double its height. So, after about 10 to 14 days into that 12 and 12 period, that's when you switch over to the bloom fertilizer. You can start the bloom fortifier regimen and any other, little tricks and additives that you can put in there that are going to, things like carbohydrates, which are your bud candy and things like that, which that add girth and weight to a flower. They'll also add to the trichome development. So then you're going to stop at about 10 to 14 days before harvest. What you're going to do is you're just going to end that your nutrient you're feeding altogether, and you're going to go into what they call a clearing phase, where you're going to take the last 10 to 14 days, preferably using what they call a clearing solution, which is a flush for the first 7 days or so, and then just use straight pH balanced water for the last 7 days. And what that does, that flush acts kind of like a laxative to the plant. It entices the plant to just kind of let go of all of those nutrients that you've been feeding it, and it's been retaining in its leaves and its buds and its stems, and it just kind of just lets go of all of that, and it all comes out of the plant. And then the last little bit of water just to give it that final cleansing, you're going to end up with the kind of product that you really, really want. You can make it look nice, but when it comes to how does it taste, how does it feel on your throat when you inhale it, those are issues that are related to flushing. If you don't flush it properly, it's not going to taste good. It's going to bite the back of your throat. And, it's just generally not going to be as pleasant as if you do flush it. I mean, if you want it to looking good, they're all going to look good. But if you want it to look good, taste good, and feel good, then you really want to go through that process at the end of clearing the plant.
Dude, you know a lot.
Tip of the iceberg, Al.
I think that we're going to call it a night. And thank you for the questions, guys. And thanks for listening, who's ever listening. If you're listening to the podcast and you're not doing anything on a Friday night, pop over to LifestyleRadio.ca and hang out with us. If you're recreational, we'll sit here and get high with you. If you're medical, we'll sit here and medicate with you. How's that?
We got time for me to get one little shameless little plug-in?
I was getting there.
Well, no, this is for almost a personal thing. Like with the anniversary of my burn coming up, I've also organized a fun run here in Lower Sackville, where I live.
Okay.
For the Nova Scotia Firefighters Burn Treatment Society.
Awesome.
And it happens to be the same day as the Marathon of Hope. So I'm encouraging people to, if they're in this area or whatever, they can run 2 races at the same time and raise money for 2 different causes at the same time. And it's just something I've been wanting to do to try and pay back for them leaving me with my house. So. It's the same track for both races? Well, yeah, it is. Well, because the second one's not really a race. The Marathon of Hope, all they do is people can run, and they have to record the kilometers they run. And so regionally, it goes towards who run the most kilometers, right? So
that's awesome.
Just a bit of a shout out for anybody that wants to run a race for a good cause. It's April 10th coming up here in Nova Scotia. So,
Lori, you got anything you want to plug? Laurie?
I'm going to be busy this Thursday going to Parliament Hill to visit a research assistant and parliamentary advisor, and then hopping across the street to visit a senator, and hopefully get our message heard loud and clear in the movers and shakers of people that are trying to write the policy about us and make sure that we're not steamrolled over.
And Ross, can you do me a favor and quickly, because the question I forgot to ask you was, as of right now, who is the member of this task force? I want people to know that. And is there a place where people can go to check these people out? Hold on, we're one of those people, by the way. Just wanted to put that out there. We are what's called a broadcast partner, and we will be here to
media supporter. You are a media supporter. You're on the website. We've got your logo. The logo is linked directly to the Lifestyle Radio website. We also have the PACE radio show logo on there as a media supporter as well.
You go. Awesome.
But the main member organizations are the MCPAC, Medicinal Cannabis Partners Alliance of Canada, is one of the groups that is under this umbrella group. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society, of which I'm on the board on that one. And then we have Maritimers Unite for Medical Marijuana, or MUM, with Debbie Stoltz-Giffen and amongst others who are involved with that group. And just recently, in fact, breaking news, we have just brought on a 4th member organization, and they are called the Haley Rose Foundation. And the Haley Rose Foundation was created to study, research, and educate the public on how vital and valuable the cannabis plant is. Haley Rose is the daughter of a lady named Cheryl Rose, and Lori, maybe you can help me a little bit on this, but I think
we've had
Haley
them both
has
on the show before.
Epilepsy,
they're
is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, she has a form of, it's a Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. So it's, I think she was diagnosed back around the age of 7. And she had a lot of pharmaceuticals that I think further damaged her little body. And I met Haley 5 years ago, the same time I met Chris when we were all in Ottawa. And she's now, I think she's finished high school, turned 21, and has gone so many months without a seizure that she's just, I can't even begin to tell you how happy I am to see her in videos now, talking and expressing her heartfelt desire that the cannabis plant be made available to children who can be aided with it everywhere without the barrier of financial burden. And that is the main goal of the Haley Rose Foundation, I believe.
That's awesome. You mean it's safe for people under 25?
Well, safer than a drug-induced coma, I would say. Yeah.
I'm going to.
Safer than a big pen cap.
I'm just looking up here. I found a really cool place where you can get audio clips. It's called Audio Burst, actually, and they have been pulling some clips from our shows here at Lifestyle Radio. So there's actually, well, you guys are just saying goodbye and stuff. I think we're gonna listen to a clip from that show that we were talking about there with Haley Rose and her mom Cheryl.
Awesome.
And I just got to find it because there's lots of different ones here. And we're going to try and put everybody together. Here it is here. As we go out, we're going to try and get everybody together that's our members so far of this, because I want people to hear the stories and know that the people involved in this new task force are representing you. People like Lori and Ross working very hard behind the scenes. Lori being on the Hill almost daily now, eh?
Oh, I wish. Once a week. I'm making it down once a week so far.
Well, this little...
Well, some days, 1 week I was in Ottawa 3 days in a row, so...
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot for me, I gotta say.
Well, I'm going to ask everybody to mute.
Medicate.
Yep, there you go. I'm going to ask everybody to mute, and I'm going to play this. It's just 30 seconds, and this is Haley Rose talking. It's listen to how happy Canadian Haley Rose is after beating epilepsy with cannabis. And this is the young lady that we were just talking about, and she is also behind with her mom the Haley Rose Foundation, right?
Right.
So this is the 420 radio show. Come on and listen to us Fridays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And next week, I don't know what's going on, but we'll be here. Marcel will be back. We don't know what else is going on.
Maybe we'll have task force on next week.
Sure. Why not? Okay, so this is the clip. Then we're going to listen to Ross's commercial, and then we're going to listen to some Joker and the Thief. This is the 420 radio show. We out of here.
Night.
Peace.
What are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
I'm feeling really, really good and very strong, very happy that I am now free, almost free of seizures, and 48 for 48 days. So I feel so much stronger and better, and much more better than I ever felt before in my whole entire life. This is like the best day ever. This is like a dream come true.
What led you to medical cannabis, and were you resistant?
That is so cool.
What are you doing? Nothing.
Are you looking for non-stop, continuous cannabis and psychedelic programming? If you are, then turn your browsers to 420radio.ca or paceradio.net, where you will find the 420 Pace re-rolled Saturday. Everything gets started at 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning.
Hi, I'm Timmy.
And I'm Mary Jane. He's the newbie.
She's the doobie. And this is the show
where we
tote
cannabis.
Talk.
From both sides.
Is that even possible?
Stay tuned. We'll be back after this toke.